Okay, so welcome everyone. Technically, this is our first session of the lecture, week 2. So we are gonna start with the first chapter of the book, Database for Information, which is the kinds of introductory chapter for this book. So in this chapter, we are gonna cover multiple concepts, multiple definitions, multiple items. But the main point is most of them are in the introductory level. So we are not gonna go in detail for them because, for example, some of the items that you are seeing here, like the data warehousing, data mining, they are itself a different course in the undergrad and also in the master level class. So they are very detailed courses. What we are gonna go through them today is to just go through the very, very, very shallow detail for this type of materials. But at the end of this session, you will learn about some kinds of different public databases that are available. We will see some of them as an example. And then we will talk about what and why, what is the reason and why we need to know about the database. What are the reasons for having the database? Technically, we will find that database is a fundamental of whatever business that already exists in the world. So that's why databases are so much important. And then we will talk about the different part of a database. We will talk about the entities. We will talk about the relation, attributes, about these things. And one more general question, we will learn what does it mean by information in general. So why information matter for us. And then by Wednesday, we will talk about the two different concepts, online analytical processing and online transactional processing. Those type of different concept in the databases. And then we will talk about the data warehousing, data mining. Again, these two by itself, they are totally different courses. So again, we are just gonna go through them in a very just 2 or 3 slides about those to just understand this type of data mining and data warehousing. And the reason we are mentioning these, the reason that these type of courses, this type of techniques already existed is just because of the data. So technically, we are one step before. We are going to understand what does it mean by data, and then why we have this type of courses. And same as always, please stop me if you have any question. Otherwise, I would just go and through different servers. So in general, when we come to the class, when we go to the gym, when we go to the library, when we sit in the car and drive, we are dealing with some physical components. Right now, you are writing with your pen on the paper. So that's feasible. You are feeling it. When you go to the gym, when you are doing some workout, you are dealing with the devices, machine over there. So you are seeing them. When you go to the library, you are reading some book, you are borrowing some book. So it's feasible. Okay. So what about some services that we are receiving daily? We are receiving second by second, especially in this era of the technology, and we don't see the infrastructure. We don't see what is happening at the back end as the other side. So that's part of the service that we call as the unseen services. For example, you log into your whatever social media account you have, okay? Have you ever thought about it? What's happening on the other side? You are just logging it and see different posters, but what's happening on the other side? That's what we call it as a database systems that we are gonna go through. All these database stuff is technically a fundamental of the whatever organization we have, whatever business we have. So it's very, very, very crucial for us. So for example, as an example about the borrowing or withdrawing or cashing or depositing some money from the ATM. We will see later about the ATM example too much. When we just go through the machine, we see some pages. It's designed with different colors, background, whatever. Ask us for the password. We put the password, maybe withdrawing some money or depositing some money. But what's happening over there? So we are gonna deal with all of these items through this course. So technically, as I mentioned last week, what it matters for me by end of this course is you to just understand the SQL code and write some queries, at least in a intermediate level for this course, and understand the structure of the data. What does it mean by data itself? Okay. So technically, we are living in the very specific area that right now, most of the places that we are going, we are connecting to the internet. We have connection through different type of network. And also whenever we go, I don't know, even sometimes these days, even you're in a cruise, when you're on a trip in the middle of the ocean, you're having access to the internet, you are doing some, let's say, purchase some materials, browsing web, whatever. So technically, second by second, you are creating data. Right now, at this moment, we are recording this session. So technically, we are just creating data. Right now, you are watching the presentation on your laptop as well, the PDF file. That's the type of the data, okay? So three different specific features that we can call it. As the first one, pervasive connectivity. So always you have the connection to the different type of networks, and then we can create the data. Also, universal mobility. Wherever we go, we have the connection. So these two technically are creating data as much as possible. The speed of creating data is insanely too much. So what happened? Okay. So that's why we can see that we have huge amount of information. When I am saying that we are gonna just understand a little about the data warehousing, we are gonna understand a little about the data mining, because technically we have to first understand the data and what's gonna happen after the data that we are creating it. So with this amount of information, amount of data that we are creating, nowadays we have a new concept that we call it as a big data. Again, that one is considered as different courses. So these type of three features technically are generating data as much as possible. Imagine yourself, you have hundreds of 1,000 times you went to the different websites to browse for some material, some purchasing some item. Most famous one, maybe Amazon. How many times you would go there, search for materials. So technically you are just browsing through the billions, trillions of data to exactly find the whatever it is appropriate for you. Maybe a couple of years ago, a couple of decades ago, you have to go through some physical items, some, I don't know, go through some books to find some materials. Right now, these days, you are just going through the online materials. So technically, that's the same concept, but this time all the things are digitalized. Everything is digitalized, and you have to go through the digital system to find your materials. There are a lot of websites that we are using daily. For example, if you are doing the programming language, whatever language maybe you would use. So during the time of working, maybe you have some questions with some specific part of the course. And for sure, at least there is one person in this world that they have exactly the same issue that you have. Okay. Have you ever heard about the website Stack Overflow? Stack Overflow? Yes, you heard. Huh? Okay. So it's like a, let's say, social network, the social network, but that's a website. It has multiple forums. So whenever you have question about the coding and stuff, you can go there, write your question, and for sure, in less than a couple of minutes, some people in just whatever country, they would go and reply to your message. Technically, with inserting your question, you are creating data, and that people that answering your questions, they're gonna also creating data. And all of these websites technically are based on some databases. So that's why database matters a lot. Or the one of the most let's say, huge website that you can just consider as a database is Wikipedia, which is the online encyclopedia. So you can just go there, have a lot of information, even though most of them are not accurate, because you can just easily go there and modify whatever information there. Have you ever used Wikipedia? Yes, but don't use it, please, because you at this moment you can just go there and write whatever that you think it's okay, and no one is gonna check it that it's a right things or wrong things. So, but whatever. The main point is that one is also based on the database. So that's why database matters a lot. That's why this course is the one of the, let's say, fundamental course of our major. When you understand data, when you know what does it mean by database, when you know how to have different answers from the database, you can get a job. You can be a data analyst. You can be a data scientist in the highest level. You can be a applied scientist. That's the type of job that you can make 200K, 300K based on just technically one simple thing, which is the data. It's not simple, but the whole concept is simple. You are just learning how to work with the data engineer. So that's why this course matters a lot. Why the database management important, because it's technically a fundamental. It's a very basic structure of the whatever that you are gonna do later in your job. Have you had a experience? Do you have an experience of, for example, purchasing something from some specific website that is maybe unique or something? You all have purchased some item from them, Amazon for sure. But do you have any unique or something like that as an experiment that maybe you would like to just tell to your friends in class? No, not a specific. Have you ever purchased anything from some scam website? No, you don't have any. Well, that's good. That's great. Because sometimes you purchase something and the other side, there's some thief over there and they're just selling you some specific items that there was a website. What is it? It wasn't a scam, but it was crazy to purchase, I think, Wish. Have you ever heard of Wish? For example, I would say they sometimes misleading you. They show you, for example, one, I don't know, PS5 for $50. And then you go there, you will find, okay, at the end of it, you are just purchasing some wire as a $50, but they're showing you just that one. So that one also technically works based on the different databases, but you need to always be careful about this type of website. So we have a lot of public databases. So one of the ones that I would really always go through it, and sometimes I used it in my research, is the Federal Reserve Economic Data, or FRED. Have you ever checked this website? So technically, let's go through it. And, okay, here. So this website technically has data from a couple of decades ago, so you can just go there and use information for free. For example, as an example, we can see here, if we just go to the unemployment rate, and we can see that the data is available from 1948 through this year. So we can see the pattern of the unemployment rate in the United States. So when you are doing some specific research, some specific task for this type of, for example, unemployment stuff, employment stuff, so for sure you can just use this type of data sets for free. The only things that matter for us is how these data right now available there, how they are creating this type of databases, and then how they are visualizing this. So the visualizing is not the main purpose of this course, but again, if you know SQL, if you know a little Excel, and if you know, for example, Power BI or Tableau. Have you ever heard of the Power BI? Yes. So that's type of visualization software. If you know that, have you ever heard of Tableau? Yes. So just SQL, Excel plus Power BI or Tableau, you can say that I am data analyst. So that's the only things that you need to know for being a data analyst. I'm very making it as easy, but it is what you need. And then if you go one step higher, you can claim that you are data scientist. Have you ever, do you know difference between the data analyst and the scientist? It's not about this course, but it's interesting to know. No, any, and yeah, for sure. But any idea what are the difference between these two? You just said a little. Mm-hmm. 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 You? Okay. Which one has a higher income? Data scientist for sure. The data analyst technically goes through the data and just explain what is happening. That's the data set, for example, for the, say, some specific organization. This is the data about how much they sold through the previous years. I don't know what is their inventory level, what is their production numbers. So data scientists, data analysts would go through those and just present those to the higher level people. Because the higher level people, the C-suite people, they are not in that mood to just go through the data. The only things that they want to see is something look like this. And that's the data analyst job, to show it. Data scientists would go one step further, which means it goes through the data and try to find a pattern to predict future. So data analyst, for sure, you need to know all of these, and you need to also be great in the statistics. So because you are predicting the future, which means you are dealing with the probability, which means you need to know the statistic. Okay, so we are not gonna be a data scientist after this course, and also even data analyst, but it is worth to know about this type of stuff. And this one is crazy. Why? What is one? Oh shit! Oh my god! It's worse. Okay, so these type of databases that usually they are available for free, technically again work based on historical data, and you can just find as much as information about through this website. The interesting point about this type of data, sometimes we as a just normal user, we can also collect the data from this website through something that we call it as the API. So have you ever heard about the API? Yes, you heard. What is it? Hmm? Yeah, in a simple English. Just tell me in simple English. Exactly. In a simple English, yeah, we are just going through the website and collect the data. For sure, the amount of data is not that much small. It's usually a huge amount of data. But the main point is technically by application program interface, which we call it as API. Some websites, they have this API system, so they will give you some specific code, some specific key that you just designed for you. And then, for example, you can go through the Python, you can go through the R, whatever programming language that you know. With those type of key, you can create some query. By query, which means you can create some request from these websites to download information, download data. Okay, my personal experiment. During my PhD, I had a paper that to work on as one of my dissertation process. So have you ever heard about the FTX cryptocurrency exchange store that they just go bankrupt and all the money laundering and stuff? So back then in 2022, this one happened. So as one of my research area, I was working in this area and wanted to know what people thinks about this incident and then predicting some extra stuff. Technically, I just did it for defending my PhD, but it was an interesting experience. So back then, before purchasing Twitter by Elon Musk, you could easily go through the Twitter request for these API keys. They gave you 4 different keys, and you can just, with some simple syntax on R Python, you could, for example, request those tweets that, for example, has FTX hashtag in their tweets. So then you can just collect those information and work with some machine learning methods to understand what does this tweets means. Okay, back then it was easy, especially when I requested for the academic access. They gave me the academic access, so I could easily download data even for a couple of years ago. In a normal case, you could just download for the previous 7 days. Okay, when Elon Musk took the Twitter and changed it to the X, they still have this one. But right now, I think it's $5,000 or $10,000 per month for collecting information, collecting tweets from the X. And they don't have the academic API as well. The reason that I'm telling you this is not because I did this. The reason I'm telling you is this because data is valuable, and he knows it. People knows it. So that's why they are making money. So right now, I just use it for my personal use, for my educational purpose. But people, they can go through these items, through these tweets, do the different type of text analysis stuff, predict what people want. According to predict what people want, they can just do the marketing stuff. So you see the value. It's worth millions of dollars, billions of dollars when you can work, when you can understand what people want. At this moment, you are doing some, I don't know, search for Ray-Ban eyeglass, sunglass on your Safari devices, on your Google Chrome. And after a couple of minutes, you would see in Instagram that they are showing you just the Ray-Ban, different type of eyeglass or different brands. So you might say, okay, oh, they are spying us or something. No, this is not a spying. This is the new way of marketing. They are do with some cookies, so we are not going to go through the technical part. They are just saving whatever search you have and then connect with the other networks that you have, different app you have, and show you exactly what you are looking for. Probably, have you ever experienced that you are talking with your friends about some specific things and you will see the related advertisement? You saw, huh? Do you experience that? So you would say, oh my God, they are spying us or something. You are technically let your phone to use the microphone, some app, they will ask you for your privacy. You can just disable it or you can just leave it as a enabled. Default is enabled. Otherwise, you would go and disable it. They are just technically not people. The system these days, we call it as the AI. Technically, they are just listening to the whatever we are talking, and the keywords matters. So according to the keywords, they are just showing you whatever you are looking for. Okay, so technically, that's just the new way of digital marketing, and it is interesting, but at the same time, it is scary. Okay, the API, it's not just for using one only person. For example, me as for the website. Businesses use each other's API. Apple weather. You don't have the Apple team, they don't have a group of people that they predict the weather. And why they would do that? Because it doesn't make sense at all. So technically they are just borrowing data from, for example, weather.com. The people that they are doing this, so technically they are connecting to each other through the API. Okay, so that's why API matters. Let's watch this 4 minutes video for the API. I would say
if you're in tech or in anything adjacent to tech, you've probably heard the abbreviation API being thrown around. So let's talk about APIs. What are they and why do we?
Okay, just wait.
Need them. If you work in tech or in anything adjacent to tech, you've probably heard the abbreviation API being thrown around. So let's talk about APIs. What are they and why do we need them? Let's start with what is an API? API stands for Application Programming Interface. Fancy words, so let's break it down. Application in this context just means any software that has a specific functionality or purpose. Interface refers to a contract or a protocol that dictates how two applications talk to each other using requests and responses. So put together, an API is simply a way for different systems or applications to communicate with each other. Okay, cool in theory. So why do we need APIs? Let's start with a non-technical analogy first. Let's say you have a dinner reservation for tonight for 3 people, but you want to change it to 6 because some friends decided to join you at the last minute. So you call the restaurant, ask them if it's possible to do that, and the customer service person puts you on hold. Takes a minute, but they finally come back and they say, yes. Simple. You called someone, made a request, and you got a response, yes or no. Now, let's say that there was no customer service person and that it was up to you to figure out how many people have made reservations for the same time at this restaurant. How many tables do they have free at that time? What's their kitchen capacity? What's their wait staff capacity? All to figure out whether you can add 3 more people to your reservation. That's a lot of unnecessary work on your part, work that you, the customer, have no expertise in. And it means that the restaurant has to reveal a lot of data to you, maybe even private data about who's eating there that night and who works there, etc. In this analogy, the restaurant is an application that provides a specific service or function, which is to feed you. You are an application that is trying to get fed with a group of friends. The customer service rep from the restaurant is the restaurant's API. That is the interface through which you can communicate with the restaurant and make requests like changing the number on a reservation. And you can do that without having to dive into the messy details about how restaurant reservations work or anything like that. For a more technical example now, think about Apple's weather app. Do we think that Apple decided to set up weather monitoring stations around the world? That's a really expensive endeavor. And if it was super critical to Apple's business model, then maybe, sure, we could see that happening. But there are already services out there that meticulously collect global weather data, services like weather.com. So if weather.com creates an API through which anybody can access their data, but only in the ways that weather.com allows, then Apple could just use that API to populate their weather app. So how do APIs actually work? Let's use the example of web API.
You want to go through the details, just understand what does it mean by API. So that's, again, it shows how data matters. The huge businesses uses the other businesses' data. So it means data is valuable and they are paying for sure a huge amount of money. But at the end of the day, they are making more money. That's why it's reasonable for them to do this type of stuff. But let's go through the main part of this course, which is the structure in the databases. So these 3 definitions, this page, technically is the only things that you need to know about the data. I mean, it's a very, very fundamental slide. So this is so important. So we go through each, try to understand it with the example as easy as possible. So let's consider two specific thing. Book, okay, and the author. Usually each book written by one author or multiple authors, am I right? And each author, they could have as much as they can write. So technically these two, we call them as an entity, we call them as a class, we call them as an object, okay? So just consider at this moment just the book. We don't have book here, and the author, that's it. Just consider these two concepts, that's it, okay? So what are the features of each book? Can you name something for a book? Number of pages. Cover, you mean the design, or okay, yeah, cover could be. But let's go through the information part. Sorry, you are saying, okay. Chapters. The book name is the one of the easiest feature of the book, am I right? So let's say book name. Who is the author? That's one of the feature. Who is the publisher? That's also another part. What is the genre of the book? Is it the academic book? Is it the just fiction book? Whatever. So let's say the category. We can just as much as we can, okay? What is the year of the book? Whatever. There are some specific features. What about the author? So what are the features of the author? Name, first name, last name, more, age, why not? More, gender, race, nationality, whatever. So these are all the different type of information. Me as a person here, I have a name, I have a last name, I have a social security number, I have a cell phone number. So these are the just feature of me. Okay, you also same. So all the things that we are mentioning here, that we call it as entity, as object, each of them, they have their own feature. Okay, by feature, which means we are talking about the attribute, a specific information that can describe one specific object, one specific entity. We will go through this type of definition by detail in module 2, module 3, and module 6. I'm trying to just right now sell you the whole picture, that what we are dealing through these following weeks, okay? If you understand just this looks simple concept, you can just easily understand the rest of the process, okay? Now tell me, what is the relationship between the author and the book? The author writes a book. How many books one author can write? As many as possible. And about the other side, what is the relationship of the book by author, an author? Written by the author, passive, active. So how many authors one book can have? Multiple, technically many, okay? So right now, what we are doing at this moment is to defining the relationship between the book and the authors. Right now, we found that one book can be written by multiple authors. So technically, the relationship between the book to the authors is one to many. One book can be written by multiple authors. On the other side, authors can write as many as possible books. So technically, there is a many-to-many relationship between these two. Just at this moment, listen, don't memorize anything. We are gonna go through the many-to-many, one-to-many, one-to-one relationship in the following chapters, okay? At this moment, we just wanna understand what does it mean by this specific relationship means. So relationship technically is the exact relationship between the different entities. Okay, right now, for the first time in this class, we just created a database schema. Database schema, which means we go through some specific context. We will go whatever. At this moment, it's just the book and the author. We defined the entities in that specific database, and we define what are the attributes, what are the feature. We define what is the relationship between these two. So at this moment, technically, we can just, if at this moment we know how to do the SQL, we go to the SQL, we go and create two tables. What are the tables? One table is the book, one table is the author. Through each table, we have multiple columns. What are the columns? Book name, author, publisher. What are the columns? First name, last name, whatever. Then with some simple syntax, we can just insert information. Hossein Mohit, write data management book, specifically do, and just easily we can just do multiple queries. What is the query? For example, which book has written by Hossein Mohit? Just by simple query, we can ask, and the report is going to show us, for example, book ABC written by Hossein Mohit. Or which book has written, I don't know, before 2000 as a year. So then you can have the output. Which book, for example, has written in year 1981 and the genre was, I don't know, fiction. These are all the queries that we can ask from the database. You see? So the simple and the most easiest way to describe what does it mean by database is this. So that's how database work. They are technically the data automatically are generated. There are people that go and collect the data. After that, there are some people that create a database for that data. And then they are going to import those data to these databases. And again, there are some people that would ask about this data from other people, and those people would go and write some queries to answer to those questions. So that's the main purpose of the databases. Okay? What do you think now about the database? Is it lovely enough? Good. It is so lovely because just imagine you are gonna, who knows, maybe you are gonna run some startup for your own businesses. So technically, data matters a lot. It matters a lot. So let's say another example. Right now, this is the IS 3280 class. Okay. How many students can take this class? Don't tell me number, just one or many. Many. I, as a faculty here, how many class I can take? Many. So technically, we are just X. Hey, this one. Let's go through the university system. Okay. So we are dealing with three entities. One entity, I don't know. Let me see this one. Good. One entity is the class. One entity is me. One entity is you. All of us have our own attribute. Exactly. I wanted to just mention features, then go to the attributes. You just did a great job and just mentioned the attributes. IS 3280, online, in person, hybrid, whatever. the time of the class, the day of the class, and also you as a student have your own. So right now we are talking about the database in the university context. Between the faculty and class, there is a one-to-many relationship. Again, just listen to this. We will go through these with details. Students to the class, also one-to-many. So the data is already created. You, as a student, have your own information, whatever class you already took. I, as a faculty, have my information, whatever that class I'm going to teach. Also, we have different classes. The information is out there, okay? So information is data, okay? Now, there are some people, let's say data people. They are technically creating this entity on some software. It doesn't matter. They are importing, inserting, typing those data to these tables. And right now, my chair, Dr. Zafar, he asked, for example, his assistant, let me know how many students, for example, in the last 5 years, took IS 3280 class, and what was the, for example, the average of the grade? How many students got A, how many students got B, how many students got C, whatever. So you see that questions, we can just simply say that one is the query. They want to understand something out of this data, okay? So this is our second database that was created. So with just some simple syntax in SQL, we can just create table. This is exactly the syntax. Parenthesis, first name, what is it? Is it character? Is it integer? So we will talk about those later. And then after creating this table, there is another syntax, insert. Let's insert a specific information for each table, and then let's ask some questions, which we call it as a query. Technically, we are done with this course. This is all you are going to learn for this course, okay? So as an example, we can see that, for example, I don't know, movie star, person database. The attributes are name, birthday, age, real name, whatever. The relationship, it could be whatever movie they already played, whatever, I don't know. For example, this specific actor plays these specific movies with this other actor or actress, okay? So that's the type of relationship. The hardest part in a database is finding a relationship between the entities. Just, we have time. Let me tell you, you are starting a business, okay? And working for a couple of months or whatever. And now, for example, you are trying to have a database. Let's imagine you haven't started yet. You're hiring some people. Those people, they would come to your business. They would go through the different departments, interview with people. Why? Because they want to know your business. They want to know how data flow in your business. That's why, have you, maybe some of you, passed the system analysis and design course? Did they tell you about the DFD, data flow diagram? Yes, yes. So technically, that's a very long-term process to interview with the people. Just imagine very long, very huge organization. So technically, they just want to know how data flow in your organization. Then they would go with the creating a DFD or data flow diagram. This is not in our course. We're going to learn it later, but I just wanted to explain how this type of thing would create. After this one, they will understand, for example, data would go from the production department, product department, to the inventory department, then go through the, I don't know, sales department. So that's how data works. By data flow, which means how the business works, okay? And after that, they will find the relationship between each department, okay? That's the very, very, very challenging task. They usually go through the hours of interview, hours of just exploring the departments. And then after that, there are a lot of different techniques for it. So you will learn more in the data system analysis and design courses. So relationship is not a very easy task to deal. So technically, this is just a very, very simple database structure from the, let's see. So from the some insurance company, this is for the accident. So we can see that, for example, there is a relationship between the person status ID, person status, active order level. That's the incident itself. When it's happened, what are the whatever details about the incident. So you see, these are all features, or what we call it as a attribute. Okay, and then we can see the location itself is a different entity. I don't know, the incident condition, different entity. So we can see how these are all related. These are all here because some people later, they're gonna know, for example, some specific incident that happened in some specific states, that happened in some specific year, that, for example, the amount of, let's say, injury is that one, the amount of money that they pay is that one. So they're gonna understand what's happening by asking questions. Why? Because they want to make some strategic decision for the future of the company. So they need to understand the data. Okay, so that's how they can just go through the data. So let's go one step back and understand what does it mean by information. What does it mean by information? What is your thought about the information? Data. Smart answer, but not enough. So yes, exactly. Making meaning out of data. Let me tell you. What is this to you? Numbers. It's just only numbers. But what if I tell you this is the phone number? Now make more sense. What I am doing right now, I am giving this tag. What if I tell you this is the cell phone number? So now you can say, okay, I can send message to this. What if I tell you this is the number, which is not a US number? So this is the area. Do you know where is it? No? +9 is 8, you know? Don't search it. This is my hometown country. I am from Iran. Okay? So right now you can understand this is the international number. So you can just easily call it and just get charged by international phone call. Okay? So what I'm doing right now, I'm just giving you my personal cell phone number in Iran. But the point is, I'm just adding tag to it, and now it makes more meaning for you. Okay? So that's why he mentioned by giving the meaning to the data. That's it. When you are creating a database, technically you yes. Tag, yes. No, TAG. Tag. Sorry, my bad. So yeah, we are just adding extra information. So when we are creating a database, technically with those attributes, with those features, we are giving meaning to the item, to the data. So technically, information itself, numbers itself, it doesn't mean anything. When we are adding tag to it, when we are giving meaning to it, we are technically creating information out of this. Or for example, I don't know, if I said just 7,000, again, it's a number to you. But when I say it's a $7,000, you would say, okay, this is the money. When I say this is for the X company, not the X, just the X, Y, Z, whatever. You said, okay, so probably that's a transaction number. And when I say to you, okay, this is the amount of dollars that they sold in the previous month. Okay, you say, okay, this is the related to the sale department. You see, I'm just giving more tag, giving more extra detail to it, and now it makes more sense. Okay, makes sense? And I know usually this type of time for classes is not a good time after lunch. Very a slow voice of me. You're gonna get asleep. Yes. Just I'm just to me tag. Correct me. Maybe I'm wrong. To me, just tag is just extra detail. I don't know. Like, let's say you are writing a tweet and then you would give hashtag to it. So technically, you are just giving some meaning to it. Tag, let's say, just extra information. If the tag word doesn't work, so just by tag or let's say extra detail, you are giving more meaning to the data. Okay. So technically, whenever we are dealing with the database system, we are dealing with these three different concepts. Data itself available, generated automatically, people collecting data. So that's the data. Okay. That's the DBMS, also called database engine or backend. That's the, for example, in our case, is MySQL. That's a database system. It's a software, okay? And the front end part is the application software. And that one is a user. Easy example, one more time, ATM machine, okay? We go to the ATM machine, ask password, okay? You log into your password. Now you can do something. I don't know, checking your balance account, depositing money, withdrawing money, whatever. Okay. So this sometimes beautiful window with some specific design, we call it as a application. Okay. Because we cannot just go directly as a normal person to the database and find something. There should be some beautiful thing outside. We can deal with them. Okay. And then request. You know what is the UX design, people? UX, have you ever heard of UX? So just designing this process, making it more, let's say, enjoyable for the users. That's one of the responsibility of this type of people, that they go and design, okay, if the customer log into this specific button, what is the next page? How the process. That's why when you go to some website, feels more pleasant than some other websites, because those people design it. Okay, so that's the applications, or we call it the front end. I go to the machine, put my PIN code. I want to withdraw $200 from my account. Okay, then it's gonna request from the database management system. That's considered as one of the query. I want to have $200. It goes through the database system. The database system here, it has a table, it has an entity that has the information of the customers. Hossein Mohit is in that specific table, customer. Then there is a table for the accounts, checking account, saving account, whatever accounts. Okay, so Hossein Mohit technically, can we have multiple checking accounts here in one bank? Huh? Maybe it doesn't matter. Just wanted to mention. Okay, right now Jose Mohit H&M so has some account here. Okay, so it's gonna ask Jose Mohit has the account, for example, yes. How much money he wanna withdraw? Okay, $200. Then this table already available, and this one already in contact with the data. So data is already filled in these databases, and then it's gonna give me the response. What is the response for me? $200 cash. Okay, and then the system automatically update itself. So right now I had $1,000 in my account. Now I have $800. $800 already updated. So that's one of the also feature of the database system. They have to be updated by second, by every transaction that would happen. Okay, so that's how the database approach works. So database management system, data specific software that here the database engine or the backend, it's a very challenging task to maintain it, because first of all you need to make sure that database is secure of whatever breach, whatever hack. I forgot to mention this one at the first part of the session. I mentioned that okay, we are dealing, when we go to the gym, we are dealing with, I don't know, visible components. Okay, we just only hear about the databases when there is a breach to databases, when there is a leak to databases. I don't know. For example, last 2 years ago, as a student, I had the, what was it, United Healthcare Insurance, and they got leaked, and social security number, phone numbers, address, everything of us just got leaked. So we found okay, the database leaked, so we can understand how the security is important, the portability, how we can have a backup of the data, how we can restore the data. Or for example, the, let's say, manipulation, which means just inserting a new data, deleting the previous data if we don't need it, updating the data. So that's all the features, all the functions that you are gonna deal when you are working with whatever database management system. Database management system, again, we mentioned that we have Oracle, we have a MySQL, we have SQL Server. In our class, we're just dealing with MySQL. Okay, so that's the part. So let's right now one more time see to this one after all of this, so we can now understand better this just specific graph when we are talking about this one. Do you have any other example on your mind right now for this one? One specific system that you would say. So the application DoorDash, the one that you go and through it and order whatever you want. Okay, so how it's gonna work, for example, just explain the process for me if it's possible. You browse through different foods. Okay. Oh, so technically by here you are just sending a request to the database system. And mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, for delivery. Yes. So technically in that area also the database updated itself. So because right now you're ordering some specific food from some specific restaurant, so at this moment, and you're also paying. So at this moment, one transaction happened. Transaction should be recorded through the database. So that's the type of things that usually automatically done in the databases. And whatever data they have already, now it's gonna update it. Because, for example, for that restaurant, the amount of item that they, for example, sold in that night. Right now, it's more for $20, $30, whatever you ordered, and then the whole process go back until you as a last user, okay, as an end user. So I need you to just, yes. The connection between the DoorDash and the connection with the DoorDash and that restaurant, technically they are considered, they are dealing with each other with the API system, yes, for sure. Yes. And because at that moment, DoorDash, they have their own databases. That restaurant they have their own databases. Okay. At this point, we just talk about the DoorDash processing. So in a DoorDash, everything updated in that data set. But yes, you're absolutely right. They are dealing with each other. So just with your friends in your table, that would be great. Just choose one of these two. The first one, create one simple database, like the one that we just created, a library, the book and author, or the one the other students, faculty, the class, whatever you like. Just very simple one. Try to understand different type of entities, different type of objects, give it some features to it, and the relation between these two, these couple of whatever entity you have. And then for the second one, choose one website, I don't know, Instagram, Amazon, whatever, and just explain how the database works. For example, when you log into the Instagram, technically you are having a profile, your profile having a profile picture, you have multiple posts, you like some pictures, you posted some pictures. Technically, these data are already created and stored in your profile. So that's the database work. And then according to your likes, according to the video that you watch, they're gonna give you some recommendation. So that's the things that we will talk more on Wednesday. So just for 5 minutes, try to talk with your friends. The only things I want to know, I want to make sure that you just get the point of database. Again, very, very simple one. So just less than 5 minutes, if you would just talk with your friend and mingle. The family case, your case would be great. So just one group for the task one. If you get volunteer, then just talk about it a little. one group volunteer for task 1. You can speak, but you have a cool voice right now. Okay, you as a team, you should do it. Yeah, because he he volunteered. But okay, the first one. Okay, guys, we have to volunteer. Good. Okay. Okay, just your voice is so cool. I would like to.
For one of them, we can use games and gamers. Like
Okay, guys.
games can have like DLCs, different like online, offline features, and different consoles. And people can also like multiple gamers can play one game. And when it comes to gamers can play multiple games, and they log hours in. And I guess that would be like a commonality between the both of them. It's like the amount of hours and when they play. Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you. And task 2.
Well, we kind of combine both. We utilize the airline reservation systems, such as buying a ticket. So it begins with a query, the origin, destination, dates. Then it goes through an API for fare databases, which basically pulls out the open seats availability, the price, government fees, taxes, and then it goes into the airline databases for seat assignments, meal preferences. And at the end, basically, it processes payment, which utilize another database for currency converters and things like that.
So technically, you're done with our first session. Let me stop the recording. And meeting. So welcome everyone. We are in the second session of week 2. Today we are going on the chapter 1 and finishing chapter 1 and get ready for chapter 2. But before starting, let me do the very quick recap for what we discussed on previous session, and then we will start working on the continue part of this chapter. So yes, start the chapter 1, understanding about the databases in general. So when we want to run a business, we want to have some whole system, for sure we need to have a database. And databases, we call it, that's a type of system that we usually don't see. It's not a physical component like the example that we had. If you go to the gym, you can work out with the devices. But when you're working, not physical, not component. It's not like a physical thing. You have to just understand it, the logic behind it, and then understand the database system. And then we mentioned because of this, there's pervasive connectivity, universal mobility, and with these two features, we are technically creating huge amount of data sets. And we mentioned that just because of these data in the new area that we are living, a lot of new concepts are creating, like data mining, data warehousing. We'll talk about this today more. Big data, just because of creating this amount of information and data, now we have a big data as a course, as a concept, and people working on those and making a lot of money by those. And we had some example. For example, we mentioned about when you are doing the coding, you have some issue, you have some problem, you would go to some website like a Stack Overflow that we mentioned, and by mentioning your question, you are generating data. Some people would reply to your issue. They are generating data, and all of these already working on some databases. So databases is very, very important. And then we've talked about the different type of general available databases, like the example that we had on the Federal Reserve Economic Data website, that you can just access to huge amount of data set for free and use it for your research, for your job that you are doing. And then we talked about the API. So we call it as an application program interface. So we mentioned that for you as an end user, for example, you can just go to some different websites, Sometimes for some websites they are free. Sometimes you have to pay, like the X right now, the formerly Twitter. So you can just have some specific key from those websites, and with some specific programming languages like R, Python, whatever, you can just use those specific key and collect data as much as you can and use it for your own purpose. And then we mentioned that it's not just about the end user to the website. It could be between two businesses. As an example, the video we also watched last session, like the Apple, for example, they have a contract with some weather website, weather company. So according to their need, they are purchasing data from that website, and they are connecting each other with each other with the API. Like the example also you mentioned about the DoorDash. So the other students mentioned that they are working the DoorDash system and that specific restaurant with the API system together. So that's how the API works. And then we started talking about the database. So as a very easy example, in our course, we talked about the two different object, entity, class. So we'll talk about the details later. We mentioned about the book, we mentioned about the author, and we said, okay, each book, each author, they have a unique features. By unique features, which means we are talking about the attributes. Book name, the year that the book published, the publisher, the genre for the author, first name, last name, I don't know, type of books that they usually write, all this stuff. So those considered as a features, as a specific things regarding each entity, which we call them as an attribute, which is a related piece of information for each of these entity. And we mentioned that, okay, for book author, there is a relationship. Every book can be written by many authors. Every author, they can write many books. So technically, there is a many-to-many relationship between these two. Again, on chapter 2 and chapter 3 and chapter 6, we will go very details about this type of relationship. And we mentioned that the most challenging part in the databases is finding a relationship between the systems, between the different departments, between the different entities. And we mentioned that for that one, people usually do a lot of multiple hours of interviewing with the different part of the company, try to find how data flow through the different departments, understand how the business work, and after that, with those information, they are coming and creating different entities, relationship, different attributes for each entities, and then with this connection, we can claim that, okay, now we are in a page that we have a database, okay? And with this whole package, we call this one as database schema. So the structure and the organization of the database, we call it as a database schema. And we had this one as an example. So how just this one for just a very simple incident things in a, for example, insurance company, we can see how this one could be complicated. Different type of entities, how they are related together. And you remember that we mentioned that one of the main feature of having these databases is asking questions from these databases. The people in the higher level, they would ask about some specific things from the database. And if you don't have a very structured, normalization is a very, very challenging task. We will learn it through the following chapters. If you don't have a very structured and normalized database, technically it's not possible to use these type of databases. So that's why we use the query. We use the type of questions to ask from databases. So that's why we use the structured query language or SQL in this course. And then we talked about the information. So what does it mean by information? We had just a number example. Then I said, okay, this is the cell phone number, this is the phone number, then this is the cell phone number, then this is the international cell phone number. So by adding more information, more label, more tag to that specific number, we could find, okay, now this is related to this specific person in this specific country that we can, for example, have more information about it. So technically, by labeling data, we are giving meaning to that one. So that's, in that case, we can call it as information and use it. Then we talk about the database structure. Okay. Database structure. So we mentioned that every database system, they have 3 different components. So the first one, which is the data itself. And then we have the DBMS, or database management system, which we call as a database engine. Also, we call it as a backend. And then the front end part, we call it as an application or software. And for this one, what was the example that we used for this section? ATM machine, yes. ATM machine and DoorDash also do the same. So we mentioned that, okay, you can go through the DoorDash, you can go through the Amazon application or ATM, do your task, whatever you need. It goes through the application. Then the request goes through the database management systems. Database management systems process your request, update the data, whatever it's needed. If it's, for example, the withdrawing money from the checking account, update the new checking account amount of money after, for example, withdrawing the money, and then go back to the database management system, and finally to the final section, which is the application. But that's the point that, okay, with this type of things, it is important to use it in which location, which part. If we are using this type of systems just for our personal use in our system machine, that's a different thing. If you are using in a company, that's a different thing. If you are using in some systems that working based on the cloud systems, that also different things. That's the point that we starting to talk about the database architecture. Database architecture, technically itself, again, it's a very simple, sorry, not simple, very different, and also would be very challenging course to learn. So again, we are just gonna go through it with just a couple of slides to understand a little about the different type of database architecture. And then if you are more interested in that area, we talked about one of the most famous, let's say, certification that if you would like to go for it, like the AWS, Amazon Web Services, which they have the cloud practitioner that you can start to learn, or also Google also, I think, have the same Google Cloud something. That's a type of course and certification that you could take in order to understand this type of architecture. But let us start with some different type of database architecture. So before starting, do you have any questions so far? No, I try to just do the very quick recap for what we have done so far. So let's go. So the first one, our database architecture that we call it as a mainframe. So as we can see here, all the application, database management system, and the data. So technically, we mentioned again, every database management system, they have the data, they have the DBMS itself, and they have the software or application. Software or application. So in this specific model, which we call it as a mainframe, technically, this is one of the most, let's say, original and applicable type of architect that most of the huge company, they use it. So according to the information, 93 out of the 100 largest company, which is bank company, so they use this one. Or for example, 71% of the Fortune 500 company, they use this type of architecture system. So how does it work? So technically, the application, database management system, and the data, all 3 components of the database management system, they all reside on one huge big machine, which they call it as a mainframe computer. And then all the rest of the users in that system, through this type of terminal, which sometimes they call it as a dumb terminal because they are just a terminal to just reflect the keyboard's commands to this system. They are not doing anything. They are just transferring whatever commands in your system to the mainframe computer. Okay, so that's the version that they works. One of the issue with this type of system, all the processing, all the tasks are doing by this mainframe computer. So the system, this type of architecture, it doesn't work. They don't work. They don't use the processing power of those other systems in the network. All the things are relied on this specific mainframe. But on the other side, the advantage part of this system, it supports a lot of computers, a lot of users. It's very good for using a lot of, when you have a huge amount of data sets, huge amount of information, that's the type of system is reliable. And especially since this one, is not relied on the cloud systems, it is also very safe and secure, prevent any type of breaches. Because one of the issue with the cloud systems always is this security. So these type of systems are really reliable, especially for the huge company, for the big enterprise and organization. So again, as an advantage of this system, a lot of users can work with the system. They can handle a very huge amount of volume of transaction information with this system. And for disadvantage, again, processing power, they just use the processing power of that mainframe, and it doesn't use the other machine in the system. And for sure, all the hardware stuff in this one is so expensive. So that's the main one, which is, we call it as a mainframe. The second one is more familiar for us. It's just what we call as a desktop version. So that's for, especially for the Windows user. Have you all worked with this Access software before? Yes. So Access software technically work based on the databases. In Access, you can also write SQL code, create database, work with the database. But one of the good points of the Access, instead of just using the coding, you can just also use the drag and drop with the software and create the database, update database, delete whatever you want. So this version, all the applications, database management system, and the data, those three components, they are just reside on one single machine, the laptop that you have. So example again, Access. So when you're using Access, technically when you're creating database, you're working with the database management system and the software at the same time on one system. Inexpensive to purchase, that's one of the positive points, and for sure easy to use. But the only maybe disadvantage that we can say is just available for one single user. So you cannot use it in the organization, or you're even very, very small businesses. You cannot connect with other users in the system. The third one, file server, which technically one of the most challenging one, and always have a lot of issue, but some specific type of businesses, they use this one, and we will talk about it. So just by looking this one, probably could you guess what's the issue of this type of system? Yes. That's correct. That's correct. Can you just explain a little more? Correct. That's correct. And what about you? Yes. Yes, correct. So both are correct. This one is more challenging because, as we see, the file server, one of the component, which is the data, is just available in one system. the rest of the users in this network, they have the application and database management system on on their machine. So there could be an issue of inconsistency between the data. When some people working on the system, they will send, change, modify something to the database management system, and then it goes through the data. So there could be an issue with the inconsistency of the data. So technically, data integrity would be violated with this type of system. Again, it doesn't mean if you use this one, it's going to happen. The possibility of happening that issue is higher in this type of system. Why they use it? As an example, the engineering companies that maybe they're working on some specific plots in the system, they are designing or drawing something. Sometimes they need to use on different part of the, let's say, drawing that they are using, so they can divide it and then work it. So that's the way this type of company, maybe they use this type of system. But again, this type of database architecture is not common that much, but it's available, and for us, it's good to know about this type of feature. So again, as a positive point, inexpensive to purchase, easy to use, but for sure, limited number of users. And again, multiple installation of the database management can lead to, can make us to have a different version of the database at the end. So client server is one of the most advanced and also most, again, acceptable version. The last one, which is gonna be the web version, we will see on the next architect system. So that one is the best one. The only difference with this one is just doesn't have the internet in this specific model. So technically, this one, the previous one, we just have the data in the database server. Here we have the data and database management system on the server. And then the rest of the user, they are just working with the application. Number of people that can use on this system, it's acceptable. A lot of people that can use it. And one of the good point of this system, right now in this version, all the CPU usage, processing power is not just relied on one single machine. The other computers, the other users in the system, the whole system, they can also take a benefit of the powering processing of the other machine as well. So the first one, the mainframe, if you remember, we mentioned that all relied on the one single machine. In this one, it's divided. So it's more energy efficient in this version. So one of the challenges for this one, the database management system for this type of systems is expensive in comparison with the previous one. But for sure, a large amount of users, large amount of data they can process, and also the take a benefit of the processing power of the all machines in this system could be one of the good advantage points of the system. And the last one, which right now we are just using it by recording this video on the Zoom cloud, and then the data is gonna store over there, and then we can use it later. So technically, we call it as a web version of the database architecture. So database server, web server, two different things. They could be also same. And then all the other users, which we are right now, you with your phone, I with my laptop. So we can connect to the internet, store data over there, and do whatever task we want to do. So this is the most common and acceptable version, but by adding internet to this game, technically we are increasing the chance of getting like a security attack, something like that, or maybe some data breaches. And adding internet to this system, it's gonna needed to have the extra layer of security for the system. So that's the disadvantage, and also at the same time advantage of this type of system. So technically, this database architecture, again, we just went through these two different architects, and we can see that how it's gonna be challenging and also needs a lot of work to do when you wanna be master in that specific area. Again, in AWS, when you get the cloud practitioner, then, for example, there are two others. I think one of them is AWS Architecture Enterprise, something like that. So that one is also very challenging certification if you would like to have. But again, with those, for sure, you need to have a lot of skill, a lot of experience to take those degrees, and they're gonna be very helpful for you in your future career. So far, I assume that some of you at least working. So do you have any idea in your organization how this type of system works? Have you ever had the experience of dealing with these things? Have you ever talked with these people in your organization? Do you have any experience? Linux? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. See. Okay. Do you know how they protect from the whatever issue with the system? I don't know, the backing up, restoring, or whatever security issue.
Is the product thing, right?
Okay.
But as far as the accessibility for data,
Mm-hmm.
that's
Mm-hmm. No. Okay. Other experience? Any? No. Good. So that's about the uh, database system, database different architect system. So let's start a new page. What we just a little talked Monday on this type of databases. When we have a business, we have some, let's say, daily activities, sometimes second by second activities, which we call them as a transaction. If you are, for example, having the website that's selling something, at just 1 second, there could be some transaction happening. Some people purchase something, some people are returning something. A lot of things are happening. Okay. So in the database systems, one of the responsibility of this type of DBMS is to record whatever happening. And by recording those things that you can say, okay, now we have the very reliable database systems because it's going to update itself. We will talk about it in details. But all these things, all these type of digital system, let's call them as digital system, we call them also as an information system. So the information system itself, for managing their own data, they need to have this type of database management system, DBMS. We have three different categories for the information systems. And the reason we have three, because on the other side, we have three type of group of people in the organization that use this type of systems. So the first one, which we call it as a TPS, or transaction processing system. Whatever happening in the organization, whatever happening in your business, everything is gonna be recorded and stored in the database system. So technically, by having these informations, who are gonna use this type of information system? Let's have good enough. Yeah, yeah, sure. Yes, that's good. Yeah, good.
This is our WIT president, Nayeli, and this is our Business Technology Association president. They run events. That's good stuff for you. And we always need new people to come in and help plan things. We were just in a meeting. But anyway, I just want to make sure because I saw you seemed like a good
Yeah, sure.
opportunity. You need to know, come get involved because you've got companies that want to hire you. And if you don't think I'm not-
Do it again.
The all majors.
So we're at
We were just doing planning right now. It's all this.
Yeah. So I think
Yeah.
you are the new president. Am I right? Okay. I just
We need to do several.
So we're going to.
If you need to connect to the club, they're always down there.
Collaborating. Thank you so
Okay.
much. Thank you. for
good to have you.
you.
Thank you. Great. Okay. So let's say in an organization we have 3 different group of people. Let's say these higher level people, I don't know, C-level people, C-suite level people, the mid-level managers, and also the just the employee in the organization. Whatever these people doing, they're collecting data, recording data, whatever happening, it's gonna be in this level. These people trying to create some food for these people, which is the mid-level. And then these people is gonna create some food for the higher level. Okay, so just consider this one. So technically, this group use TPS. We will talk about them. This group use the MIS. This group use the DSS. So that's a 3 different group that we have. Okay, so TPS again create whatever happening. Doesn't matter whatever happening. It's through this group. So this employee would collect everything, capture everything, and then the result of this section goes to the another level, which we call it as the MIS or Management Information System. Okay, so technically now by having this information, these people they go through all the data, try to find some patterns, create some data visualization, whatever they go. I'm just explaining very simple version. They're trying to dig into this data to find something for these people, which we call them as a decision support system category of the information system. So these people with all these analysis that these two group are done, they are kinds of making the big decision according to these two groups. So that's the difference between the TPS, MIS, DSS. Have you watched the movie Margin Call? No. Watch it. I mean, I would say it's necessary for the business student. And also the other one, Big Short. What about the Big Short? No? This one is amazing because I love movies, but this movie is great. Margin Call is related to the 2008 stuff that happened in United States. So just very quick things about the movies. Something is happening through the company. These two group would notice something, and after a couple of different type of discussion with each other, they will find, okay, something big is happening and no one knows about it. And then they will give the report to some level in this group, some people in this group, and they try to have an emergency meeting by 4 a.m. in the company. And that's a real story. That's a true story. It's not just a fiction. And the guy, the big name of the company, would come to the meeting and ask what happens. And the guy start talking, one of the mid-level manager, and the guy would say, just tell me in a simple English. The guy explained, and the big guy would say, said in the movies that, do you know why I'm here? Do you know why I take a big chunk from this company? Do you know why I have the highest paid in your company? And the guy say, no, I don't. And the guy say, I am here to just for one reason, to listen to the music of this company. And the only things that I can hear right now, the music has stopped for the last couple of weeks. So they are just dealing with this information to make a big decision. So in that movie, you can just see three different type of information system in the real organization. So that's the three different information systems that we have: TPS, MIS, DSS. So we will see later that the TPS and MIS is more related to the data mining. We will talk about it. And the DSS is more related to the data warehousing. We will talk about those. So any question about these two? Again, between you, I hope you have the experience. So you're working with your company, your organization. Do you have any type of similar responsibility for these in your job? For sure, you are working with the data, you're creating data. So I hope that you're not only the one person in the class that would speak, because the last semester we have exactly one student that always mentioned about the experience, and that's great.
So again, it goes down to TPS. That is section per second is basically what we measure every kind of information across the airline.
Mhm.
So we use that information, analyze it, that data there. Management make decisions whether or not capacity.
So technically, you're working with this TPS in your daily working. Correct. Yeah. Okay, great. Great. Thank you. And let's back to the DoorDash example that last week we had, the last session we had. So with that one again, every food order, every transaction, all the things recorded as a TPS. And then again, those information could be a food for the mid-level people. They create some analysis, summarize data, record again, do some visualization, and then they can do some recommendation, create some recommendation for the high level people, and then at the end they are gonna make a decision according to all this information. So technically, with these three type of information systems that we have, we need also different databases according to these three groups. Okay, so we have two type of databases: OLTP, or online transaction processing, and OLAP, or OLAP, or online analytic processing databases. Okay, so one more time, we had the DPS, we had the MIS, and the last one we had the DSS, transaction processing system, management information system, decision support system. These two groups they use the online transaction processing. And this group, they use online analytical process, OLTP or OLAP. Okay, so what does it mean by these two? Again, whatever happened in the company, whatever transaction, selling, ordering, I don't know, updating the inventory, payroll information, all the things considered as a TPS. Okay, so technically, these type of databases, again, it's gonna create some food for these two groups, TPS and the MIS, which technically the summarization of the information from this group goes to the MIS group. So they are creating some databases, and their databases are normalized. We will talk about this type of things in the following chapters. And we can just use the normal SQL to make a query for all of these. But this specific group, the DSS group, they are using all the analytics, all the, let's say, more summarized data from this group. They do, for example, extra analysis for finding patterns or predicting something, and they will create a new database for this group. So technically, they are using the OLAP. They are using the OLAP for making those type of businesses. One of the point is database in this one is normalized, but for this group is not normalized. Again, on chapter 8, we will talk about these things in details. Or, for example, SQL that we use for this section is not very challenging, but for this one, we should usually use, for example, those type of complex SQL. We will see in the next week and also the following weeks that, for example, we are gonna ask the database that we have, for example, the number of shoes that the company sold in the last January in, for example, Washington State. So with just 5 lines of the SQL, we can just get the result, okay? But by complex SQL codes, by complex queries, we mean sometimes a couple of pages of the SQL queries, which is very, very challenging. Let's watch this video. I think that would be a Yes.
That often confused.
let me go. Oh no.
So, what's the difference? Analytical and transaction, as in online analytical processing and online transaction processing. That's it. That's the difference. But hold up, don't go just yet. I have 3 boxes to fill, because when it comes to using data to make smarter decisions, it's not a question of choosing between OLAP and OLTP. It's a question of how to make the best use of processing types for your situation. Within the data science field, OLAP and OLTP are 2 types of data processing system. One is, if you need to do both, well, OLTP, it's the question of how to make the best use of both processing types for your situation. Within the data science field, OLAP and OLTP are 2 types of data processing systems. One is practical insights, while the other is purely operational. So let's start by defining OLAP, or online analytical processing. And it's a system for performing multi-dimensional analysis at high speeds on large volumes of data. And where do these large volumes of data come from? They're typically from a data warehouse, a data mart, or some centralized data store.
We will talk about the data warehouse and data mart after this.
That is ideal for tasks such as data mining, business intelligence, and complex analytical calculations. It is also well suited to business reporting functions like financial analysis, budgeting, and sales forecasting. Core of most OLAP databases is the OLAP Cube. Beautiful, isn't it? The OLAP Cube allows you to quickly query multi-dimensional data. And what is a data dimension? Well, it's simply one element of data set. So, for example, sales figures might have several dimensions related to region, time of year, and product models. And the OLAP Cube extends from format over traditional relational database schema and adds layers. So, for example, one of the top layer of the cube might organize sales by region, data analysts can also drill down into layers of sales by state or city or specific store. So that's OLAP. What about transaction processing? And it enables the real-time execution of large numbers of database transactions by large numbers of people. OLTP systems are behind many of our everyday transactions, from ATMs to in-store purchases to reservations. OLTP can also drive non-financial transactions, including password changes and text messages. In fact, my very first job involved an OLTP system. OLTP systems use a relational database to things, for example, process the number of transactions. Doing things like insertions, updates, and deletions to data. And to do this with response times, they also enable user access to the same data while ensuring data integrity and provide in-depth data sets for searching, rapid retrieval, infrastructure work, important stuff. Response pretty as that. Okay. Now, can you see how we can combine these two? In reality, many organizations will use OLTP systems to provide data. Conducting complex data analysis on OLAP systems are designed by data scientists, business analysts, and knowledge workers. OLTP, on the other hand, processing a massive number of transactions. OLTP systems are designed for use by frontline workers, cashiers, or customer self-service applications. Choosing the right system for your situation depends upon your objectives. Do you need a single platform business insights? OLAP can help vast amounts of data that you have stored. Do you need to manage daily transactions? OLTP is designed for fast processing transactions per second. If you need to do both, well, most of the time, stations use both. And systems may be used to analyze data that leads to business improvements in OLTP systems. And ultimately, yes, also create more of those OLTP cubes.
So that's the kinds of also difference on how we can use the share again. Okay. So the difference between these two, OLTP and the OLAP, is again different between the type of the group that organization would use it. Again, high-level people use the OLAP results, and the mid-level people in the organization and the regular employees, so they use the OLTP system in their daily usage. So now we talked about these two. Let's also have the introduction on these two things: data mining and data warehousing. So again, each different course, huge course, undergrad level, master level, We are just trying to understand a little right now. What does it mean by this? So the data mining, the first one, technically, simple word, goes through the data to find something with a lot of techniques. Okay, so I mentioned my experience of using the Twitter stuff to do the research for my dissertation. So technically, I'm digging into the data to find something. What I wanted to find some patterns in the data. I wanted to know what was the people concerned regarding exactly in that incident, the FTX incident that happened. So for that one, we have a lot of techniques. Have you ever heard about the different type of topic modeling techniques? Regression, not a topic modeling, but also that one is one of the techniques to find the pattern in the data. So what topic modeling techniques do we have? Multiple. LSA, latent sentiment analysis, LDA, latent Dirichlet analysis, STM, structural topic modeling analysis. We have a lot of system. So what they're doing with some probability things, with some statistical stuff, it goes through the data and try to find some patterns. Let's imagine you are collecting, for example, data from Twitter with the hashtag of election 2024, something like that, something related, meaningful. Then through the different analysis, you will find some specific tweets. For example, they are talking just for the Republican. Some specific tweets, they are talking about the, for example, Democrats. Some specific tweets talk about the conspiracy theory. So technically, you are finding patterns through these data. What you are doing, we are doing the data mining. I remember one of my senior PhD students, she did an interesting job. She collected, I think, 1 million emails. It was available data sets. That those emails was the phishing email that's sent to the people. And through those emails, through the text of those emails, she could generate a model by machine learning techniques that whenever you give the machine learning model as an input, the new email with some, for sure, level of mistake, it could predict that email is the phishing or is not phishing. So that's type of things that you can do with this type of things. Or like the one that we mentioned previous session, when you are searching on your browser about the eyeglass, you would see, okay, in your social network applications, some specific related advertisement based on your search. So direct marketing, which we call it, as also another thing that people would do with the data mining stuff. So that's the data mining stuff. So technically, data mining again go through the, let's say, TPS, transaction processing system, and try to find something based on the different type of use that we have. But the data warehousing, which we can a little see from the name, by data warehousing, we are trying to keep some data in some specific place. Simple word. For data mining, we use the daily activity data that we have. Okay. Data warehousing, what does it do? First of all, the source of data could be different. Could be external purchase data or whatever happening inside the company. Probably, can you guess what is the external purchase data for this type of things with example? Why we need to purchase some yes. Yeah, exactly. Or for example, you are selling product A, you're creating selling product A, and you would like to also know what's happening in your other company that you are trying to have a competition with them. So maybe you would like to go to some of those third-party websites purchase the data about whatever they are doing and then do all the analysis for you. So first, that's the source of the data. Then the people in the data warehousing techniques, they use the ETL, extract, transform, load. Very huge and challenging task. We are just making it simple. They go through the data, try to clean it as much as possible. Cleaning data when you are doing the data analysis, this is not related, just the experience I have. 80% of the job is always cleaning the data. Cleaning data is not an easy task at all. Because if you don't have a clean data, you cannot have a good result out of it. So this part is so important. And then they will put all the data in a place that they call the data warehousing. But the point is, this data warehouse created by different type of data mart. We will talk about this picture on chapter 8 more, but just for now, data mart technically by through this ETL, you are dividing the database according to the different features of the data. For example, one data mart is just for the sale people. One data mart is just for example, the production team. One data mart is just for, I don't know, the high-level people in the financial section. So technically, in a simple word, you're organizing data for a specific people that they have the specific needs. Okay, so data mart, each one could be beneficial for some specific people in your organization. I, for example, working in a sales team, for example, I would just go for that type of data that is related to mine. So that's how the data warehousing works. That's how we are saying that data warehousing is good for the OLAP, online analytical processing. So technically, by this ETL and the rest of their process, they are also creating some analysis on the data and then creating different type of data marts. Okay, again, data warehousing, very, very, very extensive topic to discuss. We are just making it as simple as possible that how does it mean by data warehouse. So one more time, data mining, going through the data, what's happening in the data, report, whatever. Finding patterns, predicting something like that. Data warehousing, technically categorizing data, or let's say the best way is just categorizing data, sorting data according to the needs of a different group in the organization. So that's the only difference between data warehousing and data mining. Good? No question? No? That's good. Do I explain too much that you don't have question, or you don't have just question? No? Yes. Yes. My personal experience. So when you are dealing with the tweets, so just regular tweets that you see, for example, there are a lot of hashtags, a lot of links, a lot of unnecessary information, a lot of words that you don't need. I don't like to see is in the data. It doesn't matter to me. The only thing that matters to me is some specific keywords. I don't like to see, for example, I don't know, some normal words which we call them in a data cleaning, we call it as stop words. I don't know, a, and, or something like that. So that's the type of things that we usually do when you're doing the text analysis. And then in the tweets, there is another things, those bots that send tweets. So I myself, I want to know what the real human telling rather than just a bot telling me. So again, you have to create some specific algorithm to detect which one is bots, which one is not bots. So you see all these things, my personal experience is considered as a cleaning. Now you have a, let's say, 10 million rows of data for the selling of some specific company, selling amount. So for sure, for that one, there are a lot of missing information. There are a lot of columns that are not formatted well. For example, it should be just formatted based on the currency, but it's just formatted as a text. You see, all the things could be considered as a data cleaning part. And there is no point that you would say, okay, I am done with data cleaning. Data cleaning, it's a very, very reiterative process. You have to do it until just one point, so yeah, I'm done. That's it, sorry. Exactly, data warehousing, exactly. Technically, you have a warehouse. You would like to just put this data for sales group here, this data for the marketing group here, this data for the production group here, but clean, good food for them. I mean, not just a regular data. You have to make it beautiful and clean for them. Good. And the last part, what type of job you should expect by having this knowledge. We have two type of category: technology carriers requiring database skill, knowledge-based carriers requires database skill. Knowledge-based, you are going to be a sales manager. Okay, so sales manager for sure considers the knowledge-based stuff, but you still have to have an understanding of what is the database. You are going to see the report, but the point is, you don't need the advanced level. Sometimes the basic understanding of the SQL code, sometimes the mid-level understanding of all these databases would be enough for you. But if you are going to be a data analyst, which is the technology carrier job, you have to have a definitely advanced. Hello, Dr. Green. Yes. Yes, yes, yes. Yes. No,
Sorry, thank
no, you're gonna be YouTube forever.
you. Thank you.
Yes. I'm new here. Faculty likes me. The usual. So the data analyst, this type of job, again, you have to have an advanced level of understanding of the SQL. So that's a type of also job. So for sure, for example, software engineer developer, it could be a very, very decent job with a high level of paid money, but for sure require more technological skill. But again, one of the, I would say, I don't want to say easiest one, but most accessible one between these two type of these group of jobs is the data analyst. So data analyst is a very great thing, but for sure right now there is a let's say danger of the AI. That's right now ChatGPT almost could do most of the data analysis. By ChatGPT, I mean all the generative AI stuff. But who knows what's going to happen in the future? And I have a question regarding the AI, but let's first ask your question.
So where do you?
I
where's your area?
I would do the academic one, otherwise I would go that way. No, if I wanna, I am still considering. I mean, to be honest with the data scientist, yeah, because based on what I already been through, I've been through a lot of statistical and mathematics. So data scientist, I I enjoy. So I have a cousin. I shouldn't record this one. I will, let's finish the course and then I will tell you. So that's for the today course. Let me stop lecturing, recording. Okay. So